beautiful.
Hello, lovers of the world. This is Cinta speaking. I love listening to new music. It's really fun to find new things to obsess over, whether that's a new artist, a new album, or a new song. Now that it's the end of the month, we are going to reflect and look back on all of the things that we've listened to in the previous month of May and rank every project that I've listened to in a tier list. I've added the timestamps for each album in the description so you can skip to the album that you specifically want to listen to. Before we get to ranking, I just want to talk about my specific tier list. So at the highest tier, I've called Year Endless Material. This tier is specifically for releases that came out in 2024. This is a way for me to keep track of new projects and to remind myself to look back on these releases when the time comes at the end of the year. So only 2024 releases are allowed because obviously those are the only ones I will consider. If that album is released in any other year, they can be put in any tier. Moving on, the tier below that I've called French Toast. This is the tier that houses the albums that I feel like are perfectly enjoyable. This is basically the highest an album can be placed in if that album was not released in 2024. But these also house albums that even though I really enjoyed, I don't think I will consider for the year-end list. However, if that album was released this year and was placed in this tier or the tier below, they do definitely have the chance of moving up to year endless material if I end up changing my mind down the line. The tier below that I've called Gems Found in the Mind. These albums I think are not as great as those in French Toast, but they definitely either have some tracks that I remember that I really like, or something about the project I think has a lot of merit and isn't boring compared to the albums that I will be placing in the tier below that, which I've called the most album ever. I have nothing against the albums in this tier itself. I think the listening experience for this album was decent or pleasant enough, but they don't have anything memorable about it, whether that's a track or an idea or concepts that would basically remind me that, oh yeah, this album exists. So that's basically kind of the difference between these two tiers, like whether or not I will remember that I even listened to this album or not. And then the tier below that I've called, well, I learned something new. So I'm always down for expanding my horizons, and I also like to stay up to date on releases, but if that album doesn't hit, then it doesn't hit, and that's just that. And I always try to look for the positives. I feel like if I listen to something and I learn something about myself or about this artist or this project, then I still count that as a win. And this is the tier where I would put those albums in. And then finally, the last tier is called The Eggs You Break for Your French Toast, which is obviously a callback to the second highest tier French Toast. And it's a more positive way of saying that I really didn't like it, but at least I gave it a shot, because in my search for music that I really love, you'll obviously come across music that just doesn't resonate with you as much, and that's okay. Obviously, there's like music or projects or ideas or stories that are just not made with me in particular in mind, or some music just doesn't speak to me, and that is a-okay. I always hesitate to call an album bad because I find that when it comes to personal taste, all the things that you dislike about something are all the reasons why somebody else might like that something. Also, just as a disclaimer, just because I put an EP or an album in this tier doesn't mean that I hate the artist. I am just grading this particular release. Okay, awesome. Now that that's out of the way, let's get to actually talking about what I listened to in May. So I'm going to be talking about each album in more or less the order that I listened to them in. So in the beginning of the month, I listened to Pandora by Wisp. This is an EP and it's a new shoegaze artist that kind of blew up on TikTok. I actually really like her. I can see why she blew up on TikTok. My favorite song on the EP is Pandora. And I've been following her on Instagram. She's kind of on tour. I wish she came to New Zealand. That would be so slay. But yeah, I like her. And I'm going to put this in year endless material. And then I listened to Tortured Poets Department by Taylor Swift. So I have to be clear about two things. One, I am a Swiftie. Oh, you can't see it properly. I am a Swiftie. That's a Taylor Swift poster over there, okay? I am a Swiftie. I love Taylor Swift. I went to see her Eras Tour movie with my two friends. It was really fun. I like Taylor Swift. Just because I like Taylor Swift or I have a personal relationship with her discography doesn't mean that I have to love everything that she puts out, okay? So that's a foreshadowing of what I'm about to say in this video. And the second thing I have to be clear about is that I am only ranking the first 15 tracks of the Tortured Poets Department. I'm not talking about the bonus tracks. That's for next month, okay? And that is because after listening to the first half of the album, I felt like I needed a really long break because I don't know, I just wasn't a fan of it. And I don't know, I just couldn't find it in me in this whole May. I'm very much a mood listener, so I follow my heart in terms of what I want to listen to. So if I wasn't feeling listening to the rest of the 15 tracks, then I was going to force myself to do so, because forcing yourself to listen to something is the surest way of disliking that thing right off the bat. So since my original experience with the album was already quite rough, I decided to leave the second half for another day. And yeah, and also this is my YouTube channel. I can do whatever I want. So if you want to know what I think about the second half of the album, you just listen to the June reflection video, okay? For Tortured Poets Apartment, I actually was really excited because I thought we were getting Folklore Evermore Part 3. I thought we were getting a sequel, a threequel, a trilogy, but when I found out the track list, I was like, oh. And when I found out who was participating, I was like, oh, okay. I wasn't really sure what to expect because of that. Like, it looks like it'll be Evermore, but then there's a people in there, and I'm like, is it gonna be like Midnight? Am I gonna be surprised? Like, I don't really know. And I think my confusion on what this is going to be sounding like is very much what I got when I listened to the album. As in, like, I feel like the album doesn't know what it wants to be. This flavor of sad girl pop isn't really something that I'm particularly into, to be honest. Right now, at least, I feel like I'm in a different stage of, I don't know, my life. Yeah, I just find that a lot of the decisions made in the album were, on Taylor's part at least, I found too overindulgent, and the half-hearted attempts at storytelling kind of irritated me. There were lots of really interesting ideas and concepts in there that I feel like weren't fully realized, and that was more frustrating than if the album was just like subpar, didn't have these little gold nuggets of interesting bits. Like, I would rather the album like flopped for me, like fully, than this weird in-between relationship that I have with it, where I can see what she was trying to do, or there were so many interesting things that she was trying to say, but they just weren't delivered with the conviction that I wanted them to be in. Also, production-wise, I am of the popular opinion that the Jack Antonoff, like, his hands on this were just a little bit too much. And of course, like, I fully like put the onus, full brunt of the blame on Miss Swift herself, because obviously you can't just be like, oh yeah, I'm a hashtag singer-songwriter, and not, you know, obviously, like, this is her decision to have Jack Antonoff in. And I've had conversations with my other Swiftie friends about this. I'm like, why does not just Taylor Swift, why does everybody love working with Jack Antonoff? It's really fascinating because Jack Antonoff has worked with Lorde, Taylor Swift, Lana Del Rey, Carly Rae Jepsen. Either, like, he must just be a really nice guy. The fact that so many different people with so many different, like, goals in pop music, so many different people want to work with him, I'm like, oh, he must just be a really nice guy, or maybe he's just a really good collaborator. In this album, I think some songs, I appreciated the Jack Antonoff music style. I thought it worked in the song's favor. And then some songs, I think it definitely stood in the way of the song reaching its full potential. One big example of this is the song But Daddy, I Love Him. It should have been a country song. Like, I don't know. I'm like gnashing my teeth. I don't know why she decided to like make it sound this way. Like, this could have been, oh, I'm so annoyed. Like, this could have been like the most freeing, like, yeehaw. And like at a time where country music is kind of rearing its head, like everybody's having a country era, she could have put this out and everybody would have ate it up. I would have eaten it up. Theatrics, the melodrama reminded me of like Love Story and all the other songs that were in self-titled. The discrepancy with the lyrics and the music was just too overwhelming for me to ignore, and that's why I'm like really annoyed. I feel like I'm not really like vibing with the collaborative effort that they're putting into the music right now. Okay, I don't know if I'm making sense with this, but there are some songs in here that are like really stripped back instrumental wise, but I don't feel like Taylor's voice is making up for that empty space, and the storytelling isn't like particularly attention grabbing either. So I feel like the song as a whole falls flat, which is interesting because I think I wanted to compare it with, I don't even know which songs I'm talking about because that's how forgettable they are. But the songs I'm thinking of that I don't really like and have this opinion of, I'm comparing it with a song like New Year's Day, which is like Taylor with a piano. And I really love the song because of the lyrics, the storytelling, and the way her voice sounds in it, right? But compare that with this and this, it's like completely different. Like these songs are falling short of what I know Taylor could do. Overall, I think this might be my least favorite Taylor Swift album. Before this, it was Midnights. I wasn't really a big fan of Midnights. Favorite songs in terms of this album, I gotta say it has to be Down Bad. It's the only one in the album that I feel like I actually like for what it is, and I don't feel like I necessarily have this urge to change it up as I do with the other songs. Like if But Daddy I Love Him was like a proper country song, that would be my favorite, but because it's not, I feel like, but because it's not what I want it to be, I can't get behind it at all. So because of that, I'm gonna put Tortured Poets Department in, well, I learned something new. Cool. Next, I listened to Radical Optimism by Dua Lipa. This was released this year. I actually don't like or listen to Dua Lipa that much. None of her singles have really interested me. And I did listen to Future Nostalgia when it first came out, and I wasn't really super impressed by it. And I feel pretty much the same with this album. My favorite song is probably Happy For You, End of an Era, and Anything for Love. But I'm gonna put this in the most album ever. And then I listened to Riizing by RIIZE. This is their debut EP after releasing a lot of random singles over the past 2 years. Yeah. I was really curious as to what sound RIIZE would eventually settle on, because none of their previous singles sounded like each other. They sounded very different, using different genres all the time. And while it showed the great versatility that the band possesses, it showed no overarching musical identity aside from them, I guess, being able to pull any kind of concept or musical genre off really well. Prior to Impossible, which is the title track for this comeback, prior to that dropping, my favorite single from them was Love 119, which was only released a few months before this EP, and I love both songs. None of their other songs were actually included in this EP except for Siren for some reason. I don't know why they would do that. Like, why would they not put all the other singles in this and then put Siren in there? I think they should have just kept Siren out of this EP, and it would have made the EP as a body of work a lot stronger, because Siren is too sonically different from the rest of the tracks, and it doesn't add anything to whatever story the group are trying to actually convey. I'm actually really confused as to what RIIZE is doing right now, because I thought this was their proper debut EP, but then I saw somebody else say that they were going to release another mini album, and then that one will have all of the songs in there, and then you can pre-save that new album on Spotify. Except that I don't care. I don't know. I'm checking out, whatever. The most important part is that this EP, the one that I listen to right now, is good, and that's all that matters. My absolute favorites are Impossible and 9 Days. I really, really, really like those songs, and they are candidates for favorite songs of the year for sure. I especially really love the lyrics for 9 Days. I just really like this like hopeful, like enthusiastic, joyous celebration of all their hard work. I love it. My favorite song ever. I also really like Impossible. Like when I first heard it, I was like, whoa, SHINee's sons. Yes. SHINee, you will always be famous. SHINee, these are your legacy. Because Impossible and View are like, they're like this. They're the same genre. That's why they sound like that. And then I listened to I've Switched by IVE. This was again released in 2024. I am always impressed with IVE's ability to stick to a story and a distinct sound. I was not really a big fan of Heya, and that did make me disappointed, because if you've been following me for a while, you'll know that I actually have yet to find a title track that I like from IVE, which is like, it makes me feel like a hater, but I swear I'm not. I like listening to their B-sides a lot more. Like I said, I've never not been impressed by the totality of the IVE projects, and this album is not an exception. IVE has a really incredible ability to incorporate other styles without losing the sight of their original musical identity, which is a thumbs up from me. I'm gonna put this in Gems Font in the Mind. And then I listened to You Had Me at Hello by Zerobaseone. I actually like a lot of Zerobaseone songs, but I would never like consider myself a stan, because I don't really know much about them. I don't even know their names except for Ricky, and that's only because he's a meme. But I like a lot of their music project. I'll just do a quick brief track breakdown, because I can do that. Solar Power, I thought it was an interesting song, and I honestly can't determine whether I like it or not. The execution itself is good, but it is really jarring. It's a really jarring song to hear from Zerobaseone, whose entire concept and musical identity is so different to this, but I'll commend the band for showing us how well they can still pull it off. I have no earthly idea why this track was placed as the first one, because it's a really interesting like position to put the track in when you're like jumping into the album, because there's no other song that sounds like this. So I don't know why they would put it at the first one. Like, it's not like you're introducing any other styles or sounds in the rest of the EP. I don't know. Maybe it was just for shock value. Maybe they know that this is a sound that the fans haven't encountered from Zerobaseone yet. So they were like, let's give these guys whiplash. And I'm like, okay, sure, why not? The title track, Summer Pop, is fine. Dear Eclipse is fine as well, but I feel like I've heard better R&B songs. I appreciate the inclusion though. I feel like K-pop projects always tend to have like an R&B song in there, which I like, to be honest. I don't like Sweat. I don't like that song. I feel like SF9 did it better. And then the last track, Sunny Ride and Hello, are also fine. Overall, a decent project, but not super remarkable. I'm gonna put this in Gems Found in the Mind. I listened to Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers by Kendrick Lamar. This was released in 2022. And oh my gosh, guys, if you follow me on Twitter, I have been so obsessed with the Kendrick and Drake beef that I actually ended up revisiting my favorite Kendrick tracks. And I would say even before this, I like Kendrick Lamar. I was really suspicious of Drake. You know what? I'm gonna be overindulgent. My relationship with, like, I'm just gonna talk about the beef for the second. You can skip over this if you want. I'll put like a timestamp of when I actually start talking about the album here or something. But I'm gonna talk about the Kendrick Drake beef, okay? So like Metro Boomin and Future dropped an album. Everybody was like, oh my god, Kendrick's in it, like as a surprise. And I was like, oh my god. So let me listen to this song. And I was like, wow, I like this Kendrick verse. And it kind of did actually like make me re-listen to Kendrick's discography again, because I hadn't been listening to it consistently over the years, but this reminded me. I was like, you know what, I really fuck with Kendrick a lot. That started off, and then I actually didn't really have any interest in the beef. I was keeping up with it on the side. Like, I would watch Anthony Fantano's videos on it just kind of to recap, because I'm not gonna like find out stuff about it. I didn't care enough about it, but that's basically how my interest on it was, until I remember the day that Euphoria dropped, because that was the day that my hyperfixation started, because I didn't even care about all the other diss tracks from Cole or Drake. It was only when Euphoria dropped that my brain started latching onto this like a bear trap. And then I remember to say very clearly, because that was a Wednesday here in New Zealand. That's how time zones work. And then at the university I attended, there was a protest happening, and they were trying to do a overnight encampment, like what the other university students were doing, in the United States, but the university wouldn't let them. So we started at 4:30 p.m. and I left the university at 8:30. It was freezing cold because it's currently winter here in New Zealand, and I decided to try and wear red, green, black, and white for the Palestinian flag, except I didn't account for how much colder it was going to be, and that it was going to rain. So I remember going and leaving at 8:30 because that's when my mom's work shift finished, so we were going to go together. So I stayed until 8:30, and it was so freezing cold, like my limbs were like ice and stiff, and I just remember leaving the protest feeling like, okay, we've done something. And then my reward was that Euphoria dropped, and then I got a notification on it as I made my way to where I met with my mom, and I was so excited and so relieved to have this single because of how tired and sad and cold I was. So I was on the train, and I couldn't wait to get home to listen to it. I had my earphones on, I was listening to the lyrics, and listening to the song, and listening to somebody else that I had it on me as I listened to it, and tried to follow along because I have some kind of process to do. So I was on the train, and I was like reacting to all these things. So I was reacting to the lyrics in the train, and like, guys, I was all these lyrics deep in my head. I was like so grateful and so happy I had this thing, because I was just being so tired, and I got home, and as a reward, instead of like doing anything else, I actually got to like my work. I signed bed and my cozy blankets, and I had the lyrics like genius. That was kind of when it all started. So that's how I just feel like I can't, like, when I think about Euphoria dropping, I just remember listening to it on the train coming home from a protest, and I was just like that's such a 2024 memory in the future. Like, I'm gonna remember that moment. I've always wanted to listen to Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers. It was on my to-do list from 2022 when it was first released, but I just so many of his songs I like couldn't relate to, because it was so intertwined with his experience as a black man living in the United States, that as much as I can admire the music and the lyrical quality of them, I could never fully relate to it. And that's totally fine, of course. It just means that it was very clearly written and performed with an audience in mind, and I just happen to not be part of that audience. And those who cannot relate to the album are just as important as those who do. In the case of this album in particular, the mythos around it, I always expected the album to go over my head in the same way that To Pimp a Butterfly did, except I felt like when I listened to it, it actually was accessible accessible and speaks to me more. Not necessarily because it's less about the Black experience, it still very much is, but the themes and the stories about it are more universal in terms of like stories about healing and coming to terms with the fact that we are human and that we make mistakes. And knowing what I know about how Kendrick Lamar approached making this project, I do know that it was very intentionally made for everybody to relate to because of these themes of healing and forgiveness, letting go, remorse, regret, self-reflection, guilt, toxicity within families, and stuff like that. Ultimately, while the stories in the album are very still clearly personal to Kendrick Lamar, can be relatable to somebody like me. I just haven't stopped thinking about Mr. Morale and its theme since I finished listening to it, and I genuinely do feel like I've been changed because of listening to it. So it has become my absolute favorite Kendrick Lamar album for sure. And there are instances where I consider making like a longer video about this or trying to unpack exactly why I relate to this so much, but I kind of realized that I don't have the capacity to do that, like emotionally and mentally wise. Like there's just a lot that I don't have the energy to do. But I do think that there is a kind of beauty to keeping those thoughts to myself, like, which is ironic because of course what this channel is to share my experiences with other people. But I think there is something kind of beautiful about intentionally deciding to not unravel all of this to everybody and keeping it for myself and having that relationship with the music secret because it's for me. I just really love this album so much, and I'm gonna put this in French toast. I do wonder if in another timeline where I did listen to this for the first time in 2022 or even last year in 2023, what kind of relationship would I have with the album back then or even now? I don't know if it would have clicked with me as much as it does now because I was a different person in 2022. I was a different person in 2023, and it makes me wonder, like, if I had just decided to listen to this earlier, how would I feel about this beef? Anyway, long story short, I love this album, as I've mentioned like 3 times already. My favorite songs are Die Hard. I've had it on repeat for basically all of May. Love from Damn, Ran, so Die Hard, Could Fly. Like, I feel like it's such an interesting continuation of love, from Love to Die Hard process that Kendrick had to take to get from one point to the other. I also really love Count Me Out, N95, Purple Hearts, Mirror, and Rich Spirit. So those are my favorite tracks, and I really love this album. And then I listened to Do Not Disturb by 2Z. This is an EP that was released in 2024. I like this band. Except there's nothing I hate more than an EP that is only 4 songs. 3 songs for K-pop singles I think are normal. 5 or 6 songs for an EP is the correct length. So 4 tracks, just 4 tracks is like incredibly annoying. I'm gonna put this in the most album ever. I like the song Anymore, but not enough to pull the whole project up a tier. I don't know. I think it's just too short, and also none of the other tracks were as memorable as this one. So, and then I listened to What a Devastating Turn of Events by Rachel Chinouriri, released in 2024. So I discovered this artist after coming across her music video on Twitter. It was for the single Never Need Me, and I thought it was a very promising song. Fun indie pop with a great voice, say less. Even though she released other singles, I have this rule where I only listen to 1 or 2 singles from an album before I listen to the whole album because I feel like I don't want to get too spoiled for the rest of the album when it does come out. Long story short, I didn't listen to anything else aside from Never Need Me, and that is exactly why I was so surprised when I did listen to this entire album, and it sounded like nothing I expected from it. My expectations for it was, I guess, leaning into the primarily upbeat, fun indie pop song that Never Need Me is, but I received so much more. Incredible neo-soul vocals, lots of sassy storytelling, and rich R&B delivery, and even some rock. I love that. I ate it up. My favorite tracks are definitely The Hill. I also really like Dumb Bitch Juice, My Blood, but I think this album is really amazing. I'm gonna put this in year-end list material, and I think you guys should check it out. And then lastly, I listened to What's the Story, Morning Glory by Oasis. This was released in 1995. This album was fine, but most of the songs that I liked were the ones that I already knew, like Don't Look Back in Anger, Champagne Supernova, and even friggin' Wonderwall is pretty good, but that just means that there wasn't really anything else in the album that I felt like warranted listening to the whole album again from start to finish. So because of that, I think I'm just gonna put this in Gems Found in the Mind. And that is basically it. So here are the stats for this month. So I listened to 10 projects overall. In terms of decades, I definitely listened to a lot of releases from 2024 this month. Literally all of them except for Mr. Morale and What's the Story Morning Glory are from 2024. So very heavy on this year releases for this month. Anyway, before I wrap things up, I just want to shout out this is a t-shirt that I'm wearing today. And aside from that, thank you very much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please hit the like button. I'd love to hear from you guys what your favorite musical project was from this month in the comment section. If you want to see more of my work, you're welcome to subscribe. My social media links are also down in the description if you want to follow me there, alongside my Patreon and Coffee pages if you want to support my work. I have been uploading a lot more Patreon exclusive videos lately, and I have one in the works. I don't know when they'll be out, but yeah, definitely go over there if you want to support me or if you want to watch more of my other videos. Otherwise, I can't wait to share my love with you again next time. I'll see you guys soon. Bye. Any more heart? But do you know what that's worth? Not true. Okay, you gotta roll with it. You gotta da da da.